Sounds like you're not leaving much room for discussion.
Thank you.
I know, I'm sorry. Looks like I'm reversing my field.
That's your privilege, Bill. But given our needs, given the absolute necessity for growth, given the future, the truth is joining John Bonnecue is every bit as certain as death and taxes.
Death and taxes?
Yes.
They say nothing is certain but death and taxes. Truest words ever spoken, especially here in the CBRM. But there's one other certainty. Talking about taxes is pretty darn dull, and that's for certain too. So take a sip of your tea. Just let me tell you what flow-through means. That's the concept that Mayor McDougall was talking about, and then I'll stop kicking the back of your chair.
Death and taxes?
Yes.
What an odd pairing.
It's just a saying, Mr. Black.
By whom?
Doesn't matter.
Then why'd you bring it up?
Yeah. Okay, well, I think we've accomplished everything we're going to here this morning. Shall we adjourn?
But the matter is still on the table, Bill.
Joe?
Yes. Thank you for the delicious cookies.
Hi, I'm Joe Ward of Boxer Shorts Media, and no, that's not the kind of flow-through we're talking about today. Just because Bill 340 is the law in Nova Scotia right now, it doesn't mean I'm going to stop sharing the details to help everyone understand what the whole fight was all about and why we still need to keep our hands taped and the gloves on. So Tim Houston's team took some provincial service fees off our books for corrections and public housing. And even though they're provincial services, the CBRM has always had to collect a portion of our property taxes each year to pay the province back for those services. They didn't get to keep the money, they collected it, and then they sent the province those fees that were collected. So that's where flow-through comes in. What does it mean? Well, it means the CBRM collects property taxes from us that they can't keep and therefore can't use for us. It flows through from our payments on up to the province. If the province tells the CBRM that we don't need to collect those fees anymore on our property taxes, then the CBRM will stop collecting them. But it has zero impact on the CBRM revenue. They collected it before, but they couldn't keep it. And now they don't collect it and therefore don't have to use it. It was flow through. But that's where Houston's team gets a little sneaky and where they start arguing with the CBRM about a scenario that's a bit Jekyll or Hyde, depending on how you present it. So stick with me. It's actually less complex than it seems. If the CBRM just stops collecting those fees on our property taxes because they don't have to pass them on through to the province anymore, our property tax rate would drop and we'd pay a little bit less, but it would have no effect on how much cash the CBRM had to work with every year whatsoever. But Houston's team, led by John Lohr, didn't want the CBRM to stop collecting the portion of tax for those specific fees, even though they would no longer charge us for corrections in public housing. They were just telling the CBRM the following: you can keep collecting it, but not passing it through. You keep it and you use it. The taxpayers of the CBRM won't notice. We're too stupid. We'll be paying the same amount, so it's not a tax increase, except it is. It would be a municipal tax increase because you can't tax people to pay for corrections in housing if that's not what the money is for. Ethically, you can't do that. In fact, the government is usually incredibly rigid on limiting how money is raised or how it's allocated. So if you want to do it legitimately, what you do instead is you take the portions of tax for public housing and corrections, and you reduce them to zero. And then you increase the portion collected for the municipality. You decrease one, and you increase the other by the same amount. And the ignorant masses don't know any better. We're none the wiser. But the CBRM doesn't like this proposal, and it's not because they aren't comfortable taxing us to death, but instead because they know people would eventually be asking, where's their tax break? And the CBRM would and will take all the heat for it. And Houston's team would just wash their hands of it saying, well, they cut the fees and it was up to the CBRM to do the tax break if they wanted to do it. If the CBRM actually lowered the overall tax rate on our property, not only would it be barely significant on our tax bill, they couldn't use the additional funding because it wasn't collected. We can talk about why paying the province for provincial services through our municipal property taxes is actually double taxation some other day. For now, you can take the CBRM's word for it about flow through, although they're going to quietly change their tune very soon. All taxes collected on behalf of the province are flow-through taxes. We collected them, and we have to hand them over to the province. And if we keep collecting them, but we don't hand them over to the province anymore, then they've raised the tax rate on our municipal taxes, and we'll see no tax relief. Enough for today, so I'll just make these final notes. Eliminating the provincial service fees to the CBRM was the right move. They just didn't take enough of them. The education fees would have done far more for us. So imagine if you were in financial trouble at home and someone offered to help you pay your bills, but they only paid your water bill and not your oil bill. That's the kind of deal it is. They picked the lower ones and left the big one. But if they want to actually reverse the stranglehold that the property taxes have on homeowners and businesses and the effect that they have on the growth of our tax base and our housing market, they'd have to do something like bring back the $15 million Houston gave us that took away, or fix the broken tax cap system, which they're all absolutely terrified to do anything with because of the volatility it'll create at the voting box. So that's my take on flow-through taxes. To make sure you never miss an episode, subscribe to Boxer Shorts Media via your choice of YouTube or Facebook.
Do you know what this is?
A sack.
Well, if this is a sack, then get in it.
I caught death in my sack! Why? You see? I caught death in my sack! What about that, eh?
Good.
Please hang up and try again.